Hello, and thank you for tuning in to McDougall's Medicine with Dr. John and Mary McDougall. I'm their daughter and your host, Heather McDougall, and tonight, just like every night, I'm going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. But first, I want to say hi to you, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall and Mary. How are you?
Well, we're having a nice relaxing weekend. That's what we're doing.
We're having a good weekend.
Well, yeah, and I didn't really have a topic to discuss. The Ozempic people are getting their due date. They're starting to get criticism for their approach to rapid weight loss, but of course, there's a whole bunch of people still wishing for the magic pill. So that's kind of happened, and there hasn't been anything new about the article that appeared about the new Alzheimer's drug, which I wrote a letter to the editor in for JAMA. That appears that I get the decision on that September 5th. And I hope they do. I hope they publish my letter about how you should really treat Alzheimer's, because there's a simple way to do it. And we've talked about it. In fact, you want to find out the way I think you ought to approach the problem, you can just go to YouTube and look up McDougall and Alzheimer's, and the whole lecture's right there. You just watch it and read it. But I guess what's on my mind mostly, Heather, and the reason I kind of took it easy today was, I'll tell you, I have the fourth lecture done in the series that really is it's so far as advanced as my ability to communicate has gone. It's been these four lectures. And what I tried to do, and it's just that way in life, the truth is simple and easy to explain. And that's what I've tried to do in these four lectures is I've tried to make it really, really, well, it's because the truth is simple. I mean, once you get down to the core of the problem, then it becomes something that everybody can understand and appreciate and make the right decisions about. So just kind of as a recap, I know some of you saw the four I've done so far. I've got the fifth one to do next Saturday, which is on nutrition.
But I think the difference is you make it easy for people to understand.
Yeah, I do.
Because if you had to read it from all the articles and then try and figure it out on your own, I mean, that's your whole goal, is to make it easy for people to understand.
Well, it becomes easier as I become more of an expert, as I look at the problems from, many points of view, being a doctor, understanding what the literature says, as I get better, Heather, Mary, I get better at what I do. And, I've been at this for, good grief, 55 years or something.
Yeah.
So, it ought to be gotten to the point where I can communicate effectively. Otherwise, you guys don't have much more time with me because I'm 76 years old. Anyway, what I was going to just kind of recap, the simplicity of the four lectures I've given so far, and the fifth one, which I'm going to give this Saturday. When it came to weight loss, the focal point is the hunger drive. And what I tried to explain is you can deny your hunger drive, be hungry and suffer. That's called dieting. That's pain. Or you can suppress your hunger drive by going on one of these very dangerous diets, these keto diets, which will increase your risk of dying and heart disease. That'll suppress your appetite when you go into ketosis. Or you can take Ozempic, which is basically a derivative of reptile poison, akin to rattlesnake poison, but courtesy of the Gila monster. You can do that, or you can believe that the human being is correct. The stomach's the right size, the hunger drive is correct, and so on. It's just we're making an error in trying to satisfy with the wrong foods. And as you who follow the McDougall program know, you don't think about being hungry, you just eat. You don't think about your weight because it stays stable and trim. It's because the food matches the stomach, et cetera. Anyway, that was the lecture on weight loss. And the one on diabetes is about insulin. You've got to understand the insulin issue. If you don't produce any insulin, we call that type 1 diabetes. If you produce lots of insulin and you're just too fat, then what happens? Your insulin doesn't work because it's trying to keep you from getting enormous, which it would do if we didn't develop some insulin resistance. And so with the diabetes lecture, you not understand the fundamental issues of insulin leads to cause and treatment. I want you to understand that. And then we did the lecture on heart disease, and that was probably one of my favorite ones. And what you need to understand in that one to understand why heart surgery doesn't work, how to get well, how to keep yourself out of trouble, et cetera. You got to understand that the lesions are due to rotten arteries. They're sick. they're full of pustules, and also they're full of scars. And the thing is that so pustules that rupture, that kill, it's the scars that the doctors operate on. So you got surgeons out there operating on old, hard, fibrous plaques. Once you understand that, which is the simplicity of the heart lecture, you got it. It all makes sense. And then I gave the lecture yesterday on cancer, and the issue with cancer, again, it comes down to a simple understanding. Once you get this basic understanding in mind, everything makes sense in terms of cancer. You know, why did somebody die? Why did they live? Why did they get it, et cetera? And the basic issue there is that cancer kills by doubling and spreading. And the doubling times are really slow. Cancer doesn't double by wildfire. It doubles about at an orderly rate that starts with one cell becoming cancerous until it gets big enough to find. And it takes about 10 years to find the tumor. By that time, if it's really cancer, it's already spread. Fortunately, in a good share of the cases, it's not cancer. You need to know how to be able to make the right decisions based upon knowing the natural history. You know, do you want to have these aggressive treatments or not? And once you understand that this is early detection is late detection. Localized treatment has to fail because this is a systemic disease by the time you diagnose it. Which, by the way, I thought it was kind of interesting when I was reading about the history of breast cancer. I got a great article on the history of breast cancer.
Another one?
No, it's the same one I was reading to you a
Okay.
couple of days ago.
All right.
And they talked about how back in the time of Hippocrates, they believed that breast cancer was a systemic disease. In other words, it was all over the body.
Yeah, you told me
Remember that I told
yeah.
you? Not just located in the breast. That was 2,000 years ago. And it was in the mid-1700s that a doctor, I don't recall his name right now, the mid-1700s that a doctor decided that it wasn't a systemic disease. At the time of diagnosis, it was localized. So all you had to do is attack the breast. And boy, did they attack the breast. I want to tell you, you know, they started out at the end of the 18th century, okay? The beginning of the 1900s, you know, long before I was born. What they used to do is they used to do a more than radical mastectomy. And what they would do is they would take the breast, the muscles, the nodes, and the arm on the affected side. Yeah.
I can't believe
And
it.
then a guy named Halsted, not Hagstead. Halsted became very famous in the early 1900s, where he developed the total mastectomy or the radical mastectomy. And that became the norm. How much of it was the norm? Have you ever seen a Halsted procedure done, Mary?
I have. And, you know, I mean, when did I graduate from nursing school? Probably 1970,
Maybe.
68, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I saw
You probably worked in surgery.
surgery with,
Oh,
you know,
this is brutal. I mean,
it's just awful.
it's almost a ritual what they used to do. They used to cut the woman's breast out, cut her muscles out, cut her lymph nodes out, and take the big conglomerate of tissue and throw it in a trash bag. Remember that?
Yeah.
God, I mean, how disrespectful. Anyways, they figured out that the Halsted procedure was way over treatment. So they stopped taking the muscles. And then they did a modified radical mastectomy, which was, you know, after I'd been a doctor for maybe 10, 15 years, still mutilating a woman unnecessarily, taking her whole breast and her lymph nodes. Radical. And, you know, the lymph nodes are there to protect you. You should not have your lymph nodes removed. If you have cancer, I don't care where it is, taking the lymph nodes out impairs your ability to fight the cancer. They're lymph nodes. They're there to fight disease. And when you damage them or remove them, you end up living less long. You know, a tremendous amount of side effects. Anyways, I could get onto that forever. But what I was trying to say, Heather, is that, you know, I'm kind of happy with myself, and there's been a lot of times I haven't been, in the fact that I've gotten these lectures down to really just a couple of sentences each. And once you understand these basic things, you know, the weight and the hunger drive, the insulin issue, the rupture of pustules, the natural history of cancer, you got it. Everything else makes sense. You can argue with the smartest oncologists, cardiologists in the world, and you'll win. because it's so basic. Anyway, this Saturday, we're doing one on nutrition. And what I'm going to try and explain to people is that the system's right. The body's correct. The food is right. You just have to match the two correct things together. And there's what I would call nutritional balance between the body and the food. And it's between the body and a starch-based diet, if you want the balance correct. And then I explained to you about the failure of supplements, how supplements increase cancer. Yeah, taking beta carotene, maybe vitamin C, definitely vitamin D, excuse me.
Hey, don't give the whole lecture today.
Okay. Forget it. Anyway, when you start messing with the food, you start creating isolated concentrated nutrients known as supplements, which make a lot of my colleagues very rich. You screw things up and the body doesn't know how to deal with it, and it gets sick. It gets cancer, heart disease, and dies from taking these supplements. Don't do it. Even vitamin D, oh boy, I'll tell you. To know all that vitamin D you're buying increases your risk of fractures and falls, so it gets you to change your buying habits, I think. Anyway, I've had a lot of fun putting these lectures together, but I want to thank you, Heather, for being a great host and encourage me to do this, put this together for the McDougall program.
Thank
Now we
you,
just
Dan.
have to
I've enjoyed it
unleash it on the
so
public.
much. I've learned so much. I mean, even though I've listened to you hours upon hours already, I've learned a lot in this series. So I look forward to next Saturday. And the great thing about this series is that you get a recording of your talk and also your slide deck that has all your references. So
yeah, I don't know whether I really don't. I'm not sure I wanted you to give that much away, to tell you the truth. You know, this is 55 years of my life, and people are well, except for one thing, Heather. Those of you who have known me have known that my object was to give everything away. You know, we have the McDougall program free on the website, no gimmicks. 12-day program tells you exactly what to do. Tells you the recipes, tells you the different disease processes. You have to go through a little work to do this, but not much. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of people who have done it for the free program. And so, you know, my attitude has always been that, you know, this is something that Mary and I and the family and the program owe back to the public. Why? Because, you know, my history. I mean, I almost died before my 30s. And I'm very thankful that I discovered these simple things. And, you know, so we kind of owe back to the public. That's the way I look at it. And it's just.
You want everybody to know.
I want to win.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to win. I don't care. And making money is not part of the object. I just want people to have a chance to know some basic truths that no one can argue against. I mean, they can lie, they can exaggerate, but they can't tell the truth and counter what I've had to say. Anyway, I'd be glad to contest with any of them if they want. So.
thank you. I shared the link in the chat. If anyone wants to join in on this series, you still can do that. Okay, let's get to some questions.
Let me ask you, you say that you still do it. Do you give them access to the previous lectures?
I sure do.
So all the lectures I've done over the last 4 weeks, people get to now buy?
Yeah.
Heather, we got to talk. All right. Well, you're getting the word out to the public.
Worked hard on those.
You have no idea how hard I've worked on these
No.
lectures. I've spent 55 years putting this together. And right up to the last minute, I was changing slides. It's a good lecture. They're good lectures. I'm really proud of them. So
You should be.
anyway,
Okay,
we got
ready
some
for some
questions.
questions? Yeah, let's
sure.
see. First one from Kay. She wrote in, she's wondering what a low BUN number means on her lab tests.
She eats the McDougall diet. Most likely. The BUN is blood urea nitrogen. We see this all the time. In fact, our research papers show this. But it's blood urea nitrogen. So protein, the definition of protein is it contains nitrogen. You know, otherwise you don't have amino acids. You don't have a protein without nitrogen. So blood urea nitrogen, what happens when you eat the protein, you know, either protein powders or meat or lettuce or potatoes or whatever. You eat protein, what happens is it's metabolized into urea, in the liver. And so that appears in the blood. So we call it blood urea nitrogen. Okay, remember, you don't have protein unless you have nitrogen. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about BUN. So obviously, when you go on our program, the BUN drops drastically. I think we got like a 10-point drop in BUN levels in 7 days. I could be wrong on those figures. I have to look it up, but it was a substantial drop in BUN. So, you know, they report on the lab tests, the normal BUN's like 10 to 20 milliequivalents per liter, or maybe 15 to 25 or whatever. Well, our values on our patients come in with a BUN of 7 or 8. That's good. Nothing wrong. It just means you're taking a serious burden off the body. Protein's a serious burden. You know, you need a little protein. How much protein you need? Well, to grow a baby, the ideal food for a baby is human breast milk. 5% of the calories are protein in human breast milk. That's the greatest time of your life that you grow, the greatest growth in your whole life. You double in size in like 3 to 6 months. So on a diet that's 5% protein, well, how much protein do you need? Well, you need about 3% of your calories as protein. Why? You got to repair your hair, skin, gut cells. You know, if you're growing as a child, you need a little bit more, not much. I mean, a pregnant woman or a nursing woman or mother, a nursing mother, the World Health Organization says you need 6% of your calories as protein. That's right. That's what the WHO
That's
says.
not much.
Oh, remember, breast milk was 5%.
Yeah.
And let's see what else there. Pregnant or nursing woman, 6% protein. That's the official recommendations. So anyway, okay, I'm getting to the point, and I'm going to go on to the next question. The point is if you need 3% of your calories as protein, remember, you got to look at it this as total calories consumed in the day, and that's why I talk in these terms. 3% of your calories is protein. What if you take in something like beans, which are 50% protein? Excuse me, 30% protein. Beans are 30% protein. Then you got 27% more calories as protein than you're ever going to use. What do you do with that extra protein you just ate? Well, you overwork the liver, and it's real serious if you've got liver disease. You got to be on a very low protein diet. You overwork the kidneys. That protein breaks down into amino acids, which causes an acidic condition in the body. You have an acidosis that occurs, a microacidosis. And then in that acidic condition, the bones have to dissolve to neutralize the acid. And when you dissolve the bones, you get weak bones. It's called osteoporosis. And then they solidify in the kidneys, and you call those kidney stones, or little bones in the kidneys. So anyways, too much protein is very, very dangerous. You having a low BUN just reflects the fact that you're eating the right diet now. And by the way, you have to understand what's normal on your lab test is what the average is for the general public. That's how they got the normals. They took a whole bunch of sick people, Americans they're called, took a whole bunch of sick people and found out what their values are. Like, for example, the normal cholesterol is, say, 200 milligrams per deciliter or less. Okay. But that's in a population of people where half the people die prematurely, heart attacks or strokes. You don't want to be normal. Okay, so you ask the question, well, where is it that people don't have any heart disease? Which they didn't. You know, before World War II in Asian countries, heart disease was virtually unknown. In the United States, before 150 years ago, it was pretty much unknown heart disease. You know, a few rich people got it. That's about it. So what you should be asking is, what is the cholesterol level of people who have no heart disease? Because that's what I want to be. I don't want to be normal like Americans. I want to be normal like a population that doesn't have heart disease. And that normal would be 150 milligrams per deciliter or fewer or less, or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, that's not, it's not a hard and fast number. It really isn't. I know one of my mentors, Nathan Pritikin, used to say that your cholesterol should be 100 plus your age. So, you know, baby cholesterol is 100, you're 20 years old, cholesterol is 120, et cetera. So my cholesterol should be 176, but it's not, it's 137. Maybe I need a cholesterol infusion. All right, I'm going to choose what I'm going to get cholesterol infused with. No, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. But I do have something that I still miss from the old days.
You wouldn't need it
I wouldn't
anyway.
need it, no.
Okay, well, that's a good segue for my next question. Someone wrote in, his name's Eric. He is from Puerto Rico. He's 36 and he thinks his cholesterol's too low. He's been
Yeah.
following your diet for 5 years. His total cholesterol is 106. Does he need to worry that he's at a high risk of heart disease?
No, he's virtually immune from heart disease at that level. But when I say virtually immune, there are always exceptions. So he's 106. I've seen people with cholesterols of 76. However, the person I remember that had a cholesterol of 76 was on statins. Now, why would it be terrible to have a cholesterol that's below what the body intends to have? Cholesterol has important functions. Cholesterol, first of all, is made in the liver from plant sterols. So it takes, sterols that are present in plants, and you'll have to go look up what a sterol is, and it converts it in the liver to cholesterol. So when you're on statins, what happens is you've artificially lowered your cholesterol. Your liver will take care of it, so it's always the right cholesterol, unless you have a bad liver. If your liver's really sick, then you run a really low cholesterol because your liver's ill. But the other thing is you run low cholesterol because you have to take statins and you've been misguided for one reason or another. Cholesterol, as I told you, comes from plant sterols, converted in the liver into cholesterol, which is converted in other parts of the body into vitamin D. Okay, that in the skin, it's converted to vitamin D. In the adrenal glands and in other tissues of the body, it's converted into reproductive sex hormones, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. So if you have an artificially low blood cholesterol, and it doesn't sound like you did, so don't listen to this part of the conversation. You got that naturally. But if you got it low by taking drugs, I would worry about what's happening to your precursors for vitamin D, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen. What's going on there? And so having an artificially low cholesterol is not so good.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from AA Strumming. He's wanting to know how common are side effects from nuclear stress tests. Should he be worried? He does want to mention that your diet has helped him tremendously, but he still wants to take the test just so he knows what his heart looks like.
Well, the problem with a nuclear stress test, which is what they do is they run you on a treadmill, or in other ways they'll exercise, cause your heart to beat really fast and so on. The problem with that is that they put radioactive material and then they visualize the heart with whatever technology is available. So you have an injection of I believe they use thallium. I don't know what they use, the cardiolite or some type of radioactive material. So you got radiation exposure. But the real problem is I would describe the treadmill as a conveyor belt to the operating room table, because that's what you're asking for. You're asking for heart surgery. Okay, you get on the treadmill. How often do you flunk it? If you happen to be a woman, probably half the times you flunk it, it's a false positive. You never had any serious blockage of your arteries. That's when it comes to women. With men, I don't remember the figure, but it's considerably high. A false examination on a nucleotide treadmill stress test. So you've taken this test. If it comes back positive, good chance it's not really of any significance, but it's going to cause you to want to go on to find out more. All right, so what do you do to find out more? You do an angiogram. Okay, well, what's wrong with an angiogram? Well, they cost $30,000. In good hands, the risk of dying is less than 1%. In bad hands, believe me, there are a lot of bad hands out there. You have no idea unless you really have worked with the doctor whether or not this is a competent physician or not. And having been through years of training, I can tell you a good share of the doctors out there wouldn't touch my family. Anyway, in good hands, maybe 4% chance of complications. in bad hands, that you have an 18% chance of complications, serious complications. So let's see what else happens.
Well, couldn't they find something on an angiogram that would lead them to even look further, and then it could be a false?
Well, let's see, they'd find it. They do the treadmill, and they see these pictures, you know, you know, like an X-ray picture.
Yeah.
Or it's on probably a film type thing. You see that, and it shows it's positive. You see some changes in the EKG and other indications that it's positive. Then you go in and look, and you stick your tube in there, and you throw the dye in there, and you find out that everything's clear.
Oh, okay. So the chances are that a further test would be clear.
Well, there's a good chance. They call them false positives.
Okay.
So, you know, here you flunked the treadmill.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish I could remember the number of times it was a false negative or false positive. I do remember for women, it's over 50% of the time they get a positive treadmill stress, and there's nothing wrong. So that's a false positive. With men, I can't remember the number, but it's significantly high. So you've gone the treadmill test, you flunked it, then what are you going to do? Well, you know, now I'll eat the McDougall diet. Good decision. But you'll probably be so worried that you'll go on, they'll talk you into it. You'll go on and you'll take an angiogram. And then if they find something, you'll go, obviously I got to find something. Then they'll put you through an angioplasty. I showed you all the research done on using percutaneous coronary intervention, abbreviated PCI, which is also called angioplasty. I showed you all the studies. You know, it's on YouTube. Look up McDougall and heart disease. I showed you all the studies. Every single one of them shows there's no survival benefit for doing PCI, percutaneous coronary intervention, known as angioplasty. Why? I told you when we started the show, it's because they operate on hard fibrous scars. Why do they do that? Because they can. They've got instruments to do that. Okay, they don't operate on the killing part of the disease, which is when a pustule ruptures and it causes a blood clot to form. And you have something called a thrombus and a heart attack known in every hospital. In every hospital I'm aware of, it used to be that way anyways. I don't know what they're doing up these days. I haven't been in a hospital in a while. A heart attack was known as a coronary artery thrombosis. So essentially every heart attack is caused by this blood clot forming as a consequence of volatile plaques.
And you can't really see the volatile plaques.
Not to any great accuracy. That's one of the efforts of modern medicine is to develop tests, and there have been some tests where they try to get some indication as to whether or not this person is at great risk of having a plaque rupture. That's probably where they're at. Where they want to be at, I think, is this. You want to be able to find out, you go into the artery, okay? You want to be able to find out where the greatest amount of inflammation and risk of plaque rupture is, all right? So you go in there, and they actually have thermometers that they've used to do this. They're very sensitive. I mean, they're micro degrees they measure. They stick these thermometers into the arteries, and they measure the heat that's present in a section of the artery. Of course, hotter arteries.
Oh, because
of the inflammation.
Oh, okay.
All right. So you know, and anyways, they haven't followed up with any suggestions about what to do. But my imagination is, once you've found these hot arteries, what you do then is you take another catheter and let's say there's a wart burner on the end, you know, electric cautery on the end, and you go and you cauterize this area so the plaque doesn't rupture. You see, when we develop that kind of technology, then we'll get rid of those heart surgeons because we found out another way to make money.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all money driven. You know that. I mentioned that, haven't I?
I don't think it would work anyway, would it?
That was my imagination there.
Okay.
You know. All I can tell you is they have the microthermometers. I know that. I know the research on that, but nobody's gone in and said, what we ought to do is we ought to burn those volatile lesions off.
Well, you shouldn't have said something because now somebody probably will.
Somebody will say, hey, that's a good, I bet I could develop an instrument and get a patent on it. Make like $1 billion. I think it's a good idea. But anyway, you know what you could do instead? You could eat potatoes. You could eat a healthy diet, which will stop the inflammation. Why? Because you stop the damage. And the body wants to heal. It always wants to heal. You don't ask yourself, okay, think about this for a minute. You get a bad cut on your arm. You don't ask yourself, is it going to heal? Or do I have to do something to make it heal? Do I have a special salve on to make it heal? No, you know it's going to heal because it always has, it always will. The body naturally heals. It's always trying to heal. You break a bone, same thing. You know, the bone knits itself back together. You don't have to put a salve on it or take some special supplement. It just does it. So the body's always trying to heal when you damage it. The problem is this, is the scenarios I just gave you are due to single injuries to the body, like the cut or the broken bone, single injuries. So there's a whole period of time after the injury when there's no more injury going on. The problem with the diseases that we have is we have repeated injury that goes on 4 or 5, 6 times a day with a fork and spoon, and you never stop the injury. The healing's still going on, but you never stop the injury. All you got to do is stop the injury and you get what you're looking for. Just stop hurting your arteries. How do you hurt your arteries? Well, you eat animal foods and vegetable oils. How do you fix them? You eat potatoes. I'm sorry. I know. It's just too simple. It's really too simple, but that's the truth. Just like I mentioned, populations of people where heart disease was not reported. It didn't exist. I mean, there wasn't that these are stupid people who didn't recognize a heart attack. It didn't exist in Asia before World War II. You know, so I bet if you went to North Korea right now and you were worked in their hospitals, you'd find virtually no heart disease amongst the population of North Korea, except for the guy that runs the country. He looks like he eats like American, doesn't he? Kim Jong. Anyway. All right, let's go on, Heather.
Okay, next
I've
question.
ruined that one.
This is a good one. We haven't gotten one like this. This is from a longtime McDougall follower, Star McDougaller, trim, disease-free, has a good blood panel, takes no medications or supplements, doesn't get an annual physical, can't stand doctors, but wants to know, when is modern medicine necessary or even vital for someone like him?
Well, when your body tells you you're in trouble, okay. If you have problems, that's when you should seek attention. What are your signs of problems? Well, you could become very tired. I mean, really tired. You could have pain. That's a very common indicator that the body's having trouble. Is you got pain. You could have other outward signs such as an abnormal cough. You could run a fever. So if the body's telling you something's not right, it's in distress, it's suffering disease, you know, it'll give you signs that things aren't right. Otherwise, you shouldn't be looking for trouble. That's what screening's all about. Screening is taking healthy people and looking for problems so you can turn them into patients. It's called disease mongering. Disease mongering. In other words, you fill a customer base by doing things like screening. You tell, hey, all you guys, you got to check your PSA. Hey, all you ladies, you got to go get a mammogram. You know, hey, all you men and women, you got to have your colon checked. Just think of the business this brings in. This is huge, but it's not necessary because you will get an indication there's trouble early enough to do something about it. And unfortunately, the treatments are really, really, for chronic disease, poor, to say the least. We've been through them individually, looked at their track record, look at the scientific data. There's nothing to brag about with chronic disease due to repeated injuries. But we do really good when it comes to lacerations and broken bones, which are due to single injuries. These are acute diseases. You understand the difference?
That's the time you should go see the doctor, when you have an acute injury.
Yeah, when or the body's giving you some signal that things aren't going well. Then you should go see the doctor. Otherwise, stay away from these people. You know, I don't go ask my attorneys to tell me how I'm doing unless I got trouble. And boy, I usually know I have trouble. I'm just joking. Really, my dealing with attorneys is, I just give that as an example, okay? In fact, I would like to address that for just a minute, which I hope doesn't cause a change in what's happening in the past. I've been in practice of medicine for 55 years. I've had a license to practice since 1972. So in all that period of time, I have only received one complaint against me. I've never had a malpractice suit or a threatened suit. And I think that's a matter of good luck, because most doctors could get sued, and certainly it could happen to me any old time. But it's never happened to me. And I think it's because of my ability to communicate. Plus, I don't do dangerous things to people, like send them off to these surgeries or put them on a bunch of drugs that are likely to hurt them. I take them off the drugs and get them to avoid surgeries. And so most of my customer base is really happy. So, but anyway, you want to know about the one complaint I've got against me in 55 years of practice? I bet you do. The complaint came from Veronica Atkins, the wife of Robert Atkins, the inventor of the Atkins diet. When Robert Atkins died, a few months later, one of my friends from Kansas City wrote the New York medical office and asked for Robert Atkins' medical report. They didn't do an autopsy, but they did a thorough medical exam. Found he was grossly overweight, obese, had high blood pressure. We also had heart disease at that time, whether they reported it or not. I had his angiograms at one time, and he was loaded with atherosclerosis. Anyway, so he had lied on Larry King about his heart disease status. And well, when we got this medical report, it was Neil Bernard and we went on a publicity campaign around the country where I was on the front page in the New York Times. I think I had the 4 paragraphs on the front page. I was on Neil Cavoto's show. I was on Deborah Norville's show. I got around talking about the fact that Robert Atkins was sick from his diet, and he died from heart disease, not from a fall on the ice in April. There's no ice in April on that day. But anyway, we talked about it, and Veronica Atkins got mad at us. So she sicked her lawyers on us. First thing they did is they went to HIPAA, and they found out that I wasn't covered under HIPAA for him because he wasn't my patient. All right. And the other thing is I didn't release any private information. There's no reason for HIPAA to be involved in this case at all, because there was nothing I disclosed that wasn't public information. And then she sicked her lawyers on me for my state license in Hawaii. And they went behind my back. I didn't know anything about it. I got a threatening letter. I said, let's make a public argument out of this. I would like the public to know about how I feel about your husband. And they never did that. But behind my back, they issued a warning to me, which I didn't find out for about 4 years. And that's it. That's the only complaint I've had in 55 years of practice. And again, knock on wood, doesn't mean we won't talk in a week or so. And I have somebody who's decided that they were going to change this good fortune I've had. I don't think it was entirely by accident. I think that some of the things that I do are good for the practice.
Very careful about how you take care of people.
And I try and be pretty careful about what I say too, and write. Anyway.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We've got lots coming in, of course, always. Let's see. You've talked about using Aldara for skin cancers in the past. You might have to summarize that a bit, but this person, P2, is wanting to know how long you continue putting it on the spot that you're treating.
Well, there are lots of recommendations for Aldara. So you want to read the PDR, the sheet they give you with the drug to see what they say. Then you want to read some of the literature and see what doctors recommend. Some recommend you use it for a long period of time. Aldara is a cream that was originally, it's Aldara 5% cream, imiquidone, I-M-I-Q, I don't know. Imiquidone is what it is, Aldara. It was originally used to treat venereal warts, infectious disease in women. And so, we got a woman with venereal warts, you put some of this Aldara on, and the body fights the virus and basically cures the disease. It was very effective. And then they discovered that if you put it on skin damaged areas, like actinic keratoses and basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas, that the body would eat these cancers up. What it does is it produces immune cells that actually attack the cancer cells. They don't attack the irregular cells in the body, only the bad cells they attack. And it became very popular. I, by the way, use it personally because I lived in Hawaii for many years and I got a lot of sunburn on my sailboat. So anyway, I have a lot of personal experience with it. And when I first started using it, it would cost like, I don't know, maybe $100 for 12 packages. And then they discovered that it really was a powerful drug when it came to sun damage. So it went up to $1,000 for 12 packages. And then it became generic, and now it's like $16 for 12 packages. But anyway, you put the cream on, you put it on at different intervals. So it's kind of up to you how to decide, you and your doctor decide how to use it. But I'll tell you the way I use it. As I use it every day or every other day, and usually in about 7 days, sometimes 10, sometimes it takes a little longer. It breaks out like you have poison oak, poison ivy. And so it becomes very inflamed. And what that is that's the immune cells killing the cancer cells. And so you get a reaction, which is pretty significant. You don't want to schedule your high school reunion time when you use Aldara. It can become a bit unsightly. And it can become a little bit painful too, not terrible, but a little bit painful. And then what you do is you use it, say it takes 7 or 10 days for you to get this reaction. As I use it a couple more times after that. Maybe every day a couple of times or every other day a couple of times. And then I stop. And then what happens is over the next 7 to 10 days, it heals. And you've got a scab that forms and it heals. And what it ends up as is essentially nothing. I mean, there are no residuals on my face from all the treatment I've given over the last 40 years with Aldara. And I've had some pretty serious reactions. And so you end up having pretty darn good cosmetic results. Now, why isn't it popular? I'll tell you why it's not popular. It's because there's competitive procedures that dermatologists and other doctors use to treat sun damage. Like Mohs procedure, which is a surgery they go on, they cut and cut and cut, send tissue to the pathology department, and virtually cut enough of your body off so you can't see any more cancer anymore. By that time, you got big holes in your face, or you're missing part of your nose. But they make a lot of money. And so they also use liquid nitrogen and lasers and other instruments that create money. That's why they do it. I've asked some of my dermatology friends, well, why don't you use this? Or I've had patients ask, why don't you just use Aldara cream? It's like $16 for 12. It may cost you as much as 50, but it's just a few dollars. Why don't you try it? And if it doesn't work, then you can send them off to the surgeon or the liquid nitrogen. Well, it hurts too much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, it doesn't hurt very much at all. It's just a lousy excuse.
You don't think slicing off a part of a person's nose would hurt?
Yeah, remember, we have one of our patients, and if I mentioned, she was married to Jim. They used to go on trips with us.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? A beautiful woman. I mean, who really cared about her personal appearance. I mean, we knew her for 20 years, still know her. I saw her one day and she was just doing fine. And then we didn't see each other for several months. And next time I saw her, she had a big hole in her cheek, out like that, gone. The cancer was gone too. And my response, which I may have said to her and probably didn't, was, why didn't you ask me? Why don't you ask me what I would have suggested first before you did that? She could have said, well, I didn't want to bother you, or you're just a health food doctor, whatever. Anyway, it's some pretty sad reactions for people who didn't know about Aldara. But it's never going to become popular because it doesn't generate any money in the doctor's office. What are you gonna? Well, how's the doctor going to make money with you getting a refillable prescription for Aldara? Will last you for a year or 2 years or 3 years or what? Well, where's the income? Tell me where the money is. Anyway, it's a very, very safe, effective treatment where the body is caused by Aldara to to attack bad cells, cancer cells. Very, very effective. Not for everybody. It doesn't always work, but good grief. Might as well try this first.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Hanging out with Kim is wondering if flax is healthy to add a quarter cup a day to your oatmeal to lower blood pressure.
Somebody brought that up to me, Heather. A couple of us, I always say I learn a lot from doing these sessions. And somebody brought that up to me, the idea of adding flax or flaxseed oil or flaxseed or something to lower blood pressure. And I told them I'd never heard of it. But then I looked it up. And yeah, there is research that says that adding flax or flax, I think it was flaxseed, because I've never prescribed.
Flaxseed, yeah.
I would never prescribe flaxseed oil. But there's some studies out there that show that adding flaxseed lowers blood pressure. And that surprised me. It lowers cholesterol. I knew that. Gives you a great bowel movement. I knew that. We used to prescribe flaxseed at our live-in programs because people needed a little help with their bowels when they first started. So I don't, it's not, when it's a flaxseed, it's not much of its digestion. You might get some stool issues, loose stools, stomach cramps, things like that. But I don't see any adverse effects to using a quarter cup or whatever you suggest of flaxseed on your cereal. But I wouldn't use that as a primary approach to high blood pressure. I would use, as I guess you're doing, I would use the basic diet, get a little exercise, a little sunshine, and stop taking your blood pressure all the time. I know that sounds really crazy, doesn't it? But you end up causing your blood pressure to go up when you worry about it a lot. It's called white coat syndrome.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from God's Girl. She wants to know how you get enough D and B and protein.
Well, D is the sunshine vitamin. I shouldn't have to say anything more than that. If you take D as a supplement, either a pill or a shot, if you take more than 1,000 international units a day, you're in a range that causes trouble. In fact, the higher you go, the worse the problems, but you increase your risk of fractures and falls when you take commonly prescribed doses of vitamin D, like 5,000 units a day. Many of you are taking. That's associated with more falls and fractures. So you want to get the vitamin D from the sun. As far as protein goes, our requirement of protein is so low, it's impossible. Unless you devise an experimental situation where you devise your food in a laboratory, you leave the protein out. It's impossible. You've never seen protein deficiency. I've never seen it. Neither has any of your doctors ever seen it.
Everything's got, everything has protein. Lettuce has protein in it.
What I was going to say is some of the doctors have seen protein deficiency because vodka has no protein in it.
Oh, okay.
If you take care of Skid Row alcoholics, they're protein deficient.
Made from potatoes.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any protein left, Mary.
Okay.
What they do is they take the sugar in potatoes and they turn it into alcohol. No, protein's not involved.
All right. Sorry.
Anyway, so protein's not an issue. B12, we recommend that you add a non-animal source of B12 to your diet if you've been on the McDougall program for more than 3 years, or if you're pregnant or nursing. It's always been a recommendation. Why? Because there's a 1 in a million chance you'll run into a problem with B12 deficiency on a vegan diet. It's really, really extremely rare, but I don't want any trouble. Why should I put myself at any risk at all? Because it's impossible. You won't find a dietitian, a doctor, a scientist who will criticize our program in any way about the amount of iron, calcium, protein, fats, fibers, vitamins, anything. Zero. Unless you get to B12. That's the last, the last hurdle for people who want to criticize our healthy diet. Last bastion, I think I was trying to say. The last bastion for people who want to maintain their unhealthy habits. People like to hear good news about their bad habits. So, my chance of having a heart attack is like 50%, a stroke. My chance of breast cancer is like 1 in 7. Chance of getting prostate cancer is 1 in 6. Chance of being obese is like 80%. but I don't want to get any tingling on my toes from B12 deficiency. So I'm going to risk all those problems so I don't have tingly toes from B12 deficiency. And by the way, I'm just kind of joking. You get an easily reversible peripheral neuropathy when you first get B12 deficiency, and there may be some cases that were so prolonged, so severe that people actually got permanent neurologic damage. And I think those are up for question, but we'll just leave it as I have. To the naysayers, we add B12 to our diet, the McDougall program. And now you can't criticize me for anything, except I'm taking money away from you, or I hope I am. No, that's not really my attitude. I'd like to see doctors make a good living. I really would. But I don't like to see patients hurt. That bothers me.
You want them to make a good living doing the right thing, right?
I think so, but it's hard to do. Unfortunately, it's hard to do. I mean, when you got to spend an hour like we do, we spend like 50 hours with patients to help them change their diet. And that takes time. It's hard to turn that around into cash. Whereas you took pills, I mean, good grief, these colleagues, friends of mine who sell supplements, they're making millions of dollars. Oh, you got a little heart trouble. Well, you could eat more vegetables. And by the way, buy my flaxseed oil. Yeah, I got the best flaxseed oil in town. It's the doctor so-and-so. I'm not going to mention any. I've almost started mentioning some names.
No.
But
Okay, next question. We've got 8 minutes, so we're going to fit as many in as we possibly can.
I'll go fast.
Okay, this is from Stacy. She wrote in and she says she's had essential tremors since she was in her late 20s. She's now 75. She's been whole food plant-based for less than a year, wondering if this lifestyle will help heal her tremors.
No, I don't think so, Heather. I run into a very good friend of ours, and you know her. It has the same thing. And I'm a really close friends of ours, and I would like to be able to help her. But, these kinds of essential tremors are due to neurologic damage that happens early in life, and they're not reversible. Now, you say, well, what would cause that kind of neurologic damage? I have on my computer, under my favorite articles, an article was published about a byproduct of meat causes these tremors, of cooked meat. And I'd have to look it up, but I could find it.
Byproduct of meat?
Cooking meat, yeah. It produces a substance that damages the neurologic system, which this article attends. They say that the research clearly says that this toxin produced by cooking meat causes essential tremors. Maybe, like I say, beautifully in 15 seconds, but I won't. Look it up. Look up meat and essential tremors, and maybe you'll find the same article that I have. Cooked meat.
Learn something new every show we do. I love it.
And Heather, to take things like beta blockers to help with the tremors, patients are not very happy with that, but doctors try. So there really is. You just end up shaking it. You got to be careful. I don't know any way to correct it.
Okay, thank you. This next question is from Joyce. She's wanting to know if there is a low pulse rate that she should be concerned about.
No, not unless, yes, you should. If you have slow heartbeat due to damage to the heart, what happens is the heart normally beats at about, say, 70 beats a minute. And that beating is determined by the chambers that are on top of the heart, called the atrium. And they change this beat, they send this beat to the ventricles, and they beat at about 70 beats per minute. All right, that's a normal pulse rate. If you have blockage in this pathway from the atrium to the ventricles, so that you're not transferring the pulse from the atrium to the ventricles, you get a heart block. You would think you would die, but you don't. And the reason you don't die is because the ventricles, those big chambers, those big muscular chambers, have an intrinsic beat of their own. So even though they're cut off from all nerves, you can cut all the nerves around the heart, all the nerves that go into the ventricles, the muscle itself intrinsically beats at 40 times a minute so that you don't die if you develop this severe heart block. Under that circumstance, But the positive circumstance where your heart rate becomes low is if you're an athlete. By being an endurance athlete, you develop a slower pulse rate. Why? Because your heart becomes stronger and more efficient. So it figures out that it can pump the blood you need with fewer strokes. That's why an athlete has a low pulse rate. But athletes can get down to a pulse rate of, say, 50. But you have to cut off the nerves to the ventricle to get down to 40. And you get pacemaker for that, by the way. Not an athlete, but somebody who has heart damage, neurologic damage to the heart. And that's where modern medicine really shines. There's some wonderful things in modern medicine. Really. I don't say it enough. Do I, Heather?
No, you don't.
You remind me. Thank you.
There's some great doctors out there too, right? I got to put that in there.
There are some great drugs and great doctors, I'll tell you, like Aldara. I mean, I just gave you a whole speech on Aldara. That's a great drug. You know, penicillin, antibiotics are great drugs. You know, so there are some great drugs out there.
Okay, next question. This is from Roger. He wants to know your thoughts on taking 1 gram of aspirin a day.
I think it's a bad idea. Okay, 1 gram aspirin a day is like 1,000. It's 100 milligrams. 1 gram, 1,000. Well, it's 1,000 milligrams. Yeah, it's 1,000 milligrams. A baby aspirin is 81 milligrams. Taking a baby aspirin used to be recommended to prevent heart disease. It's not anymore. Official recommendations are you should not be taking a baby aspirin a day unless you're really sick. You've had a lot of heart disease, a lot of strokes or something. We just pull out everything we can to help you. But the benefits aren't great. But their benefits are not there if you haven't had serious trouble. So don't take it. Official recommendations. The reason is you have 3 times the risk of a gastrointestinal bleed. You have an increased risk of all kinds of bleeds. This is a serious drug. So I would not take it routinely to prevent heart disease. And if you're really sick, like you've had serious heart surgery or heart attacks, then, you know, you might guess that it's going to help you. But the help isn't great.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 2 minutes. You want to try and fit one more in?
Oh, maybe 2.
Okay. Let's see. Is losartan, you know what this means, HCTV daily safe?
No, well, losartan is an angiotensin receptor blocker. HCT is a diuretic. Okay, angiotensin receptor blockers are dangerous. I don't prescribe them, and your doctor shouldn't either, because they increase the risk of dying of heart disease. What your doctor believes, and shouldn't, is that angiotensin receptor blockers are the same as ACE inhibitors. Different drugs. They both affect adrenal glands. Angiotensin receptor blockers, in my read of the literature, have clearly shown they're going to increase your risk of dying of heart disease. HCT is hydrochlorothiazide. It's not the diuretic I prefer. The diuretic I prefer is chlorothalidone. So in other words, I'd never use the sartans. Okay, sartans are your angiotensin receptor blockers. I would use a diuretic if I couldn't get the blood pressure under control, which means the blood pressure was sustained at 160 over 100 millimeters of mercury or greater, like for months. Then I put a patient on chlorothalidone, not the combination, not hydrochlorothiazide, but chlorothalidone. It's a different drug. It's the drug that's been tested. But people think that all diuretics are the same. They're not.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Come on, Heather, one more question.
One more? Okay. All right. Why not? We started a little late. We can take one more question. Okay. This is from, well, this is an easy one. Okay. This is from Bit Finesse. How many cups of steamed veggies is the bare minimum that I need to eat daily? They want to maximize their potato intake, but still get the nutrients they need.
Well, the potato gives you everything you want. Potato has all the vitamins, proteins, amino acids, everything except for B12. So you can live on potatoes and water alone. People have for more than a year. Probably a lot more than that. So you don't need any vegetables at all to get the extra vitamin A and C. It's in the potato. But if you said, well, how about a grain like rice or corn? They're deficient in A and C. Underground storage organs aren't, like potatoes and sweet potatoes. They have loads of A and C. But above ground storage organs like legumes and grains, like rice and corn and wheat and so on, they're deficient in A and C. So how much green and yellow vegetables you have to add to compensate for that deficiency? Maybe a tenth of a cup. A couple pieces of broccoli, a flowerette of broccoli be okay. A couple slices of orange, that'll be okay. That'll do it. You don't need much. So, and adding more, I can't see would make any more difference. I don't think you'd be any healthier adding broccoli and cauliflower and kale, and celery, whatever, asparagus or whatever, to your potato diet. I don't think you're going to be a speck healthier. Potatoes will do it. But it may be more interesting to have those things in your food. They have different taste, color, texture, aroma. You cover all bases too, so you don't have to buy into my simplistic message. But a potato will do it.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, we got to tell people what we're doing. We're going to do this last lecture next Saturday, and then a couple of Saturdays from now, I'll be in Palm Springs, which is having some really interesting weather right now. I'll be in Palm Springs, and I'll be getting an award at the J.W. Marriott from the Nutrition Society. So our whole family will be there, pretty much. A lot of people will be there. There'll be about 500 plus doctors too.
So if you want to come and meet us.
It's September 10th and 11th. We'll be there in Palm Springs. And then we've got a 12-day program coming up. Heather, you're going to have to add more 12-day programs. Let's face it.
Yeah,
So
this
we got
one's
a
already
12-day
filling
program
up,
coming
so.
up. All right.
That's good.
That's all we're going to be doing. Yeah.
Well,
And
we-
hopefully I've got a couple articles coming out I'm really excited to tell you about. That will be published in the scientific journals. So,
Great.
all right.
Thanks, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall, Mary. That was a great hour. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We will see you all next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Have a great
Thank
rest
you,
of your
Heather.
day.